Hello and welcome to the Essential Libertarian, giving you the tools for self-governance. I'm Kareem, your host, joined by my amazing co-host, Daniel Bitro. Daniel, how are you?
I am good. How about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. So let's rock this. Got some interesting stories for you tonight. But before we do that, if you want to keep the ideals of Ron Paul alive and Murray Rothbard, if you want to fight against this government tyranny, go to lpmisescaucus.com. No more wars, no more lockdowns, no more bailouts, no more mandates. You can just put your first name, last name, email, phone number, state, and be part of the decentralized revolution. Also, I am now on Getter. So is Daniel. So you can find us there at Cream66. And you can find Daniel Bitro at Daniel Bitro. Basically, we just started on these platforms. What we're trying to do with Getter is kind of start what Twitter should have been, which is a platform where you can talk about stuff without getting banned. Now, as Tim Pool said, I don't know if Getter is going to be any better. This isn't an endorsement necessarily. I'm just saying I'm going to try it out and see kind of what it does. And if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, my bad. You know what I mean? So I think it'll be interesting to see because it seems to me the right wants to talk to the left and the right, and the left wants to talk to the left. So I don't know how well this will work, but we'll see. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, and we'll have to see because a lot of Twitter seems to be just following left, and all these opinions. So eventually it'll become an echo chamber. Twitter seems to be an echo chamber to me. I know there's different views, but pretty much to me it's an echo chamber. I don't know what Getter is going to be like, so we'll have to see. It's an experiment, not an endorsement. But I'm trying the experiment. You can find me at Cream66. All right, so let us get into it. So Navy said they're going to block people acting against 35 COVID medical procedure refusers. So 35 people said, no, I'm not taking this procedure. I don't want to do that. Then the federal judge in Texas actually granted a preliminary injunction, stopping the Navy from acting against 35 sailors for refusing on religious grounds to comply with an order to get this procedure against Rona. And the injunction is a new challenge to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's decision to make medical procedures mandatory for everybody in the military. And the vaccination and the medical procedure allows for exemptions on religious and other grounds, but none of the thousands of requests for religious waivers have been granted. The Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said officials are reviewing the injunction and are in discussion with the Department of Justice as to what options might be available to us going forward. Since then, the Navy and other services have managed to avoid major disruptions and said about 24 sailors on board the USS Milwaukee, roughly 25% of the ship's crew had tested positive for Rona, keeping the vessel sidelined at naval port. So, okay, bunch of stuff here. I'm going to say is one, this is the problem with highly centralized institutions. One person can make medical decisions for everybody else. That's not good. Even if it was everybody needs to drink water and eat apples all day. That's, first of all, I want people to recognize that's bad. And I think that's the heart of the problem. You can get a good person, then you can get someone who's going to abuse power. So the central institution part, to me, causes a lot of problems. The second is it seems very odd to me, especially Australia being one, and I think it was Antarctica, that people who received this medical procedure seem more likely to get Omicron. Now, I don't think it's that dangerous from what Malone said. It's an upper respiratory infection, not a deeper one, so it should be fine. Second of all, I'm kind of surprised that people like Lloyd Austin still kind of taken seriously, and people are still kind of complying with this, and that's the problem. A lot of people talk really tough and say, "Hey, we're not going to comply, don't comply," but when you get in the military, there's not much you can do. But there has to be a certain point where, like certain states, like I think it was Oklahoma, the National Guard just said, "Hey, no, we're not going to do it. And if you keep pushing, we'll do our own militia." I think that it just might come to that. So we might have to decentralize because it's not so much that, oh, well, you can get a good guy in there and he'll do the right thing. Well, you can get someone bad quickly. So to me, it's just a matter of fact of I think decentralization is the best and the only long term answer here.
Yeah, and I think I'll agree with you on that. And I think the thing with this that's interesting, it's like it, the fact that individuals have not been granted any religious exemptions. There's been thousands of people who have asked for religious exemptions, who have
Mhm.
said they want religious exemptions, who have shown to a lot of people to be not only serious, but to be telling the truth, to be honest. And, this country was predicated on the protection of belief, and that belief is fundamental, and that the moment you start intervening in people's beliefs and their belief system is the moment where the state has too much power. It's like that's one. There's a lot of sort of ways that we recognize when a state has become too powerful and has become too authoritarian. And one of the first ones is when it starts disrupting religious practice. And the fact that you have, again, thousands of people who have not been granted they've been denied religious exemptions, just shows you that all of these mandates are they're a trick, and they'll tell you and make you assume that things are self-evident when they're not. And it's like when you're talking to someone who all they watch is CNN, and they're like, well, that's not true. If you believe in God, or if you have a problem wrong with you that makes you not available to take the vaccine, you don't have to get it. And it's like, but you go to New York City and you realize that the mandates apply to people who can't even get the vaccine. Forget religious exemptions, medical exemptions. If they get the vaccine, there's a high probability of them dying or getting severely injured permanently. And these people still cannot enter in restaurants, still cannot enter in gyms. So they keep trying to convince you that what they're doing is okay, and they keep trying to normalize people into doing it, when in reality what really they're doing is they keep tightening it and tightening it and getting stricter. And while certain people will always believe what the mainstream media is, because if you assume that the government is good from get-go, if you assume that the government is doing what it's supposed to, well, then it's no surprise why you would believe that they are doing medical exemptions and why they are doing religious exemptions when they haven't granted a single one. For as far as
No,
I'm concerned, there is no religious exemptions. There is none.
no,
That's
because well, my mom actually got one. My mom actually did get a but not in the military. No.
yeah.
So, and to me, a religious exemption makes sense. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you have religious freedom and you're predicating on the idea that we still follow the Constitution, at least here and there, should be saying, hey, if I have religious freedom within reasonable doubt, obviously people can abuse religious freedom, like, oh, I have religious freedom. Can I have this? Can I have that? Entitled to this? No. But if you say I have religious freedom and I don't want to take part in a medical procedure, I think that not only makes sense, that's the only way to go about it. So I don't really see a great solution for this other than decentralization of this institution, because this is clearly not working.
Of the military, you mean? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yes, I know
That's
people.
That's an interesting sort of hypothesis, because I think that people already people organically form militias and whatnot regardless. And I think that
Yeah,
there's certain areas that I would say of our society that would be much more complicated and harder to decentralize from the way it is now. Like, good luck trying to decentralize the CIA, which is literally like everything about it is central. But like something like the military would be a lot easier, because parts of it already are sort of decentralized if you really look at all the branches and whatnot. But the problem becomes more so of the ranks and of the bureaucrats and of the hierarchies that were the military hierarchies that were created by the government, and really over time have not only created more positions, have given more people power over others, and have sort of centralized it. And that it wasn't always like that, but over time, the military has become a much more central thing, to the point where, like it is, like the term, you're just a number in a system, something like that, where the military soldier, who should really have all the power, doesn't have that much at all, and is beholden to the military constitution, which is a completely different constitution than the actual United States Constitution. And I was talking to one of my friends about this on a podcast. Can't remember the name of it. Long story short, though, basically they don't have to follow. They completely follow a different set of rules legally. Like, they live their lives completely different. Unless they want to get kicked out of the military, and which that's not too good on your record. So I get it, let them take accountability, because they did sign, and they did put their, they did accept all the risks that came with the military. I get that. So I'm not going to say like those people are in a bad position because they did it to themselves. But the point is like, if you want to just if you want to just look at it from making our military more effective and actually getting things done like the way it is right now, I mean, look at the last few wars we've been in. It's been a mess. It's been a mess, because you have people who don't want to fight. You have disorganization. You have a complete fucking array of generals who have complete radical agendas and policies that completely go against what the majority of the other military does. And you have the changing of generals that makes it very hard to this is one of the problems, I think, with democracy in general. And I'm not, you can say it's not a good thing or a bad thing, but the problem is you don't have enough time. You don't have quite enough time to cement any sort of consistency and decency, is what I'll say, right? Like, you have to cement decency. You have to have a continuation of a model. If that's the successful model, whatever it is, whether it be the president working with Congress, right? That has to be the model. If that's not the model and that changes, and it becomes inconsistent, and another pattern of behavior becomes consistent, you're never going to break that. And it's just, you're going to keep going. It's going to be very sporadic, as we've seen. But at the end of the day, I think every president aids in the increasing of the powers of the state, whether they do it intentionally or not. Every president for the last at least 40, 50 years has increased the powers of the state. So they should be able to do that. The president shouldn't be able to do anything other than serve the people, right? And this is part of what the founding fathers intended, to minimize the damage that someone at the top could do. But the thing is you take war, for example. If our founding fathers were here, you know what they'd be saying about our last wars? They would be saying that they're completely wrong, more from a moral standpoint, and two, that we had no right legally, constitutionally, to enact those wars. We completely bypassed Congress, and we've done this the last 3 major conflicts we've been in. Forget Congress, forget the old system and the way it was supposed to be, forget the checks and balances. It's up to the president, right?
Yeah, and I even go further. I think there should be some way to even stop them. Like, even if you get caught, like, okay, wait, we're going to Iraq. Like, whoa, well, like, what's the point of this? Like, oh, 9/11. But wait, whoa, who was involved? Oh,
hey, Kareem, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I will be right back.
Yeah, so that'd be an interesting question. Like, okay, we're going to Iraq. Okay, who are we going to ask? Congress. Okay, Congress says we should do it. Why? Like, there has to be even more checks and balances and stuff like that. So, with all that being said, the story on the Navy, I'm thinking the best solution is decentralization. Caleb Shreve is watching. He's given me some good ideas on how you would do that. And essentially, what you do is each state would have maybe the governor is, acting as the president, but you would have decentralized militias. You could still figure out how you would kind of divide that up. We can all have agreements to work collectively against any enemies. And then the only way we do international kind of conflict, if there is one, is if someone steals our tankers on our water. So someone has to actually attack the tankers on the water. That being said, let's get back to the rest of these stories. So, what do we have next? Children, this is in Breitbart, will need almost a decade to recover from lockdowns. As we can see, children have probably been the one of the biggest groups hit by this because they can't see their friends now. They have to, wear all this weird equipment like this face shield and all this stuff. I can't imagine what it's like to be a kid growing up through this, and I know it's tough. And it's not just something they're going to recover for, with all this problems. So, what I'm going to say is, I generally, there's some stuff with Breitbart I like and I don't. I do agree with this here. So, that being said, children from low income families worldwide will need 7 to 8 years to recover to return to the pre Rona poverty levels, according to a recently published report by the UN Children's Fund and the Latin American news site. And I'm not even taking into account as much as they are the financial thing, because we can figure that out. But I'm taking a lot, the emotional strain they've had. Will they ever actually recover from that? So the ongoing pandemic, which began in 2020, has been the worst crisis for children in UNICEF's 75-year history, according to the organization, reported preventing a lost decade. In the last 2 years, 100 million more children have fallen into poverty, a 10% increase since 2019. UNICEF, a UN agency that provides humanitarian aid to poor children globally, wrote on December 9th. The report included a call to resume in-person learning for school-aged children, millions of whom have been affected by the ongoing Rona lockdowns that either shut down the local schools or prohibit in-person classes. In a series of prints published on this, a team of researchers picked up through all hospital admissions for people younger than 18. Studies found that Rona caused 25 deaths in that age group. About half of those deaths were individuals in the underlying complex disability with high health care needs, such as tube feeding or assistance. So, what I would say is, I was talking about the fact that children are going to need a decade to recover from lockdowns. And I don't even know if I completely agree with Breitbart there, because they're looking at children falling into poverty. Now, I would actually say, because Breitbart's kind of right-wing, I'm kind of libertarian, they're not taking the fact that if kids start investing and people start investing, who knows? If you have a real free market, one right purchase from an altcoin can make you $1 million. That being said, I'm not saying that'll happen, but to me, it's more the financial is a thing that put kids into poverty, according to UNICEF. But I think the more important thing is what Dr. Malone was talking about. If you watch the whole interview, which I did, is like the mental stuff, like not being away from their friends, not being able to see faces, things like that. Children are going to need a long time, or they may not. Unfortunately, what I'm saying is they may not recover, like suicides and setting us up. So it's really, really a tough time for kids. And I talk about world issues, but sometimes I don't talk about that as much maybe as I should, because that's who's really going to have the effect on that. Because like Malone said, like, hey, all this stuff goes through, like, I'm gone. I'm 62. So yeah, it's one of the biggest factors. I think that's worth fighting, is to help the future generations, because I didn't grow up. I mean, I didn't grow up completely free, but I didn't grow up like this. I don't think anybody deserves to grow up like this.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's scary to think about with the lockdowns is, for one, the intentions of them, and for two, the consequence of them. The intentions of them are scary, because you have a large portion of the elites, or the politicians, policymakers, CDC, NIH, a lot of the people who aided in the creating and recommending of this policy, with the knowledge and the competence level to know the effects that this would have. to know the effects of the Universe 25 experiment, and to know that not only when people are alone do they feel like they have nothing left to lose, not only do they feel like they're on edge, not only do they feel pressed, not only do they feel angry and resentful, but it's going to affect the collective mentality, and it's going to be a trickle effect because okay, people who are younger are far less equipped to deal with the lockdown than those who are older and who have been through situations, who have been through life, and know and have the tools to handle hard things and adversity, know how to handle that because they've been through adversity, right? Kids, that's not the case with them. They're still, for one, their brain is still developing, and their skills of handling adversity are not quite as good as the adults. So you have the kids whose lives are going to get torn upside down. You have suicides that are up like crazy. You have females who are cutting themselves, hurting themselves at, I wouldn't even, it's beyond alarming, at insane rates right now. You have people who have been violent towards others, like violent crime. I guess that's a good statistic to sort of qualify that. But violent crime is up like crazy. School suspensions is up like crazy. Grades were down, I think, by average by like 1.2 or something like that. So that means those students before lockdown who got A's were now getting somewhere like B's or C pluses, or yeah, B, just a solid, something like that. And grades are down, people's attention's messed up, and then you take into that the emotional effect that this will have on kids, because the key thing, and whether you be a Freudian, whether you be a Jungian, whether you be a Piagetian, whether you be a student of Eric Erickson's or a student of Adler, they all knew and pointed out how important psychosocial child development was, how the child develops over time socially and psychologically, and how his socialize or her socialization makes him become a proper or improper adult when not properly socialized. And the demoralization of not being like this, look at the people who weren't talked to in schools, yet typically they don't have the best, they're not the best adults, they have problems, right? So imagine that with everyone, right? Imagine that with all the kids have just had a break, a large break for a long time in the psychosocial child development, right? And all of them at the same time have just been thrusted out of normal society and a normal living of society and socialization among their peers. And this is going to play a part not only on the parents of these kids who are going to face problems, but this is going to play a bigger part on the kids of these kids, right? And you have to understand that this is an effect. It's generational. We are not going to bear these consequences quite yet, as this article sort of points out. It's going to be years before we start to really see exactly the damage that was done here, which is why I think if there's even talks of lockdowns, if there's even talks of restrictions, you should go outside and you should protest, peacefully protest. And this is happening in Australia right now. In Victoria, there was a guy who caught himself on fire, poured gasoline on himself yesterday, and burned himself on fire because of the lockdowns in Victoria, Australia right now. That's how far we're getting. We're getting to the point where people are willing to catch themselves on fire to show everyone else around the world watching that that's how bad lockdowns are. They would rather burn to death intentionally than suffer under the lockdown. So people are getting pushed to the brink right now, and if it happens again in the U.S., it's going to be catastrophic, in my opinion.
Yeah. Does that remind you of anything, by the way?
Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Funny enough, that's what got me into Rage Against the Machine. I'm like, man, these guys, like, ooh, they're anti-establishment, and I'm like, maybe not, but that was the one that really got me. Like, people are like, oh, don't you know the Republican? I'm like, oh, someone bought politicians. I'm shocked, but like, if you predicate your musical existence on Rage Against the Machine, I don't know, maybe you should be against the machine and not pushing tyranny. And there actually is an event. I don't know if I'll go, but I will pull that up at the end of the show, actually talking about peaceful protests. Anybody wants to go, I don't know if I'll be able to, because of time restrictions. But I like to, maybe, who knows?
Where is it?
At the end of Dr. Malone's thingy.
Oh,
He pulled
yeah.
out defeat the mandates. DC United We Stand March, January 23rd, 2022, Washington D.C. March with us.
Yeah.
Be free to work, free to travel, free to learn, free to question, free to speak.
I'll be there. You know what? That actually works perfect for me. I'm gonna go to that actually. I'll be there. So anyone who's watching this video, this obviously YouTube has banned me. I have 2 more days off of my timeout, and then I'll post back to YouTube again. But those watching, I will be there on the 23rd to that protest without a doubt. I'll be there.
Yeah, and who knows? Heck, I'll try to figure something out. All right, let's get to a fun one. Now, I'm not a health insurance company, but we got a little crisis in America. Deaths are up 14%, those aged 18 to 64, based on life insurance claims for 2021 after the Rona medical procedure rolls out. So finally, the elephant in the room no one wants to discuss in 2021 regarding labor shortages and supply chain bottlenecks, which is that a record number of younger people in the workforce were dying after taking a certain medical procedure can be swept under the rug as statistics. Because that's what people always say. They're like, oh, I tried the VAERS website and God, it's the worst thing in the world. Like I was trying to click and it's like, you got to accept here.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not hard.
It's not hard to use, but it's kind of like reminds me of PennDOT. Like, oh, hey, there's 50. I'm like, dude, like this is more disorganized than HostGator. And no offense to HostGator. In case they want to sponsor me, I'd love you guys. HostGator, cool. But like, it's the website's messy. Right? It's hard to use, so it's hard to look at statistics, and statistics are underreported. But insurance companies are predicated on, hey, I want to make money. They're not like angels at all. But they're predicated on, okay, life insurance. They have to keep these stats because the free market, unlike the government, they have to at least kind of deliver a product. I'm not saying insurance companies are angels or they're great people by any stretch of the imagination. I don't hang out with insurance agents. I wouldn't meet them at a party. But I think this is very strong evidence that it is messed up. So they can't push the statistics. Scott Davidson, CEO of One America, a $100 billion insurance company based out of Indiana, has come out publicly and stated that based on life insurance claims, death rate has skyrocketed an unprecedented 40% among those ages 18 to 64 in the third quarter and into the fourth quarter 2021. The head of the Indianapolis-based insurance said the death rate is a stunning 40% from pre-pandemic levels among working-age people. We're seeing right now the highest death rates we've seen in the history of business, not just One America. Company CEO Scott Davidson said at an online news conference this week, the data is consistent across every player in that business. Davidson said the increase in deaths represents huge numbers. It's not elderly people who are dying, but people 18 to 64. And most of the claims for death are not being classified as Rona, which is interesting. And if someone's like, oh, okay, 40%, what does that mean? Just to give you an idea how bad that is, a 3 sigma or a 1 in 200 year catastrophe would be a 10% increase, over the pre-pandemic. So, if you have a hurricane that went through a bunch of states, that's what it would be. What the data is showing us is that deaths are being reported as Rona, greatly understate the deaths lost among working age people from the pandemic. It may not be COVID on their death certificate, but deaths are huge numbers. And he expects the costs are going to be well over $100 million, and this is our smallest business. Now, he also said the number of hospitalizations in the state is now higher than before the Rona procedure was out a year ago, and the fact that it's higher has been in the past 5 years, Dr. Lindsay Weaver, Indiana's medical chief officer, said in a news conference with Governor Eric Holcomb on Wednesday. If we take a look from the 31 prior years, that I'm talking about, there was a total of 851 deaths among the workforce age people, which is an average of 27 deaths per year. So what we're seeing here is actually a 12,000. I don't know how I don't know if that might be higher, but 12,100% increase following taking this thing. So,
and that's a 12,100% increase in what exactly? In the people who are dying from like insurance agencies exactly? Is that what it is?
Well, basically, if we look at the VAERS vaccine, or the VAERS, the adverse events reporting system, the percentage of reported deaths among the workforce is much higher than Rona for the past year than the average deaths reported per year. All vaccines, all medical procedures from the previous 31 years. So looking at the deaths following Rona shots for those between ages of 18 and 65 for 1 year, VAERS reports 3,294 deaths. For the previous 31 prior to getting these procedures, there were a total of 851 deaths among workforce age group reported following procedures, which is an average of 27 deaths per year. That's actually a 12,010% increase.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Because if you think about it, though, one thing that I think that's crazy about that, and I saw that, but not that exact statistic, but I knew it was somewhere crazy more than it was. And one thing that blew me away and why I don't understand people are not talking about this is because we've had like the swine flu vaccine, an influenza vaccine, the flu shots, all these other vaccines and stuff like that were pretty much mass inoculations, millions and millions and millions of people. I'd like to look at the numbers, but I'm pretty sure more people got flu shots than still have gotten COVID shots today, right now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's something around there. And the fact that only 800 or so, whatever it was, died total in 31 years, the fact that the average was like 20 something deaths a year, you said, and that's crazy because we've seen thousands of people die in that same age range. That's more than like in 3 decades, literally. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. It's crazy because I think it's easy to throw these numbers away, like it said, or I don't know if it was you said that for like the statistic purposes, but when you really pull out and you look at it, it's like, why is this vaccine so much worse than other vaccines? Why are people dying at such an alarming rate than other vaccines? Why are people having way more adverse reactions? Now, when you look at people and you say, well, it was only 10,000 people out of okay, but when you look historically to use other vaccines and medical procedures as context, as full context, and get the bigger picture, you realize that this is by far the most deadly vaccine ever.
Yeah. Well,
in the last 31 years, I'll say. Let's just say that. The most deadly in the last 31 years by death and by adverse reaction.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know and I know this because I played too much Call of Duty, funny enough. And then I read it in the history book. But I think Joseph Stalin said the death of one man's a tragedy, the death of a million is a statistic.
That was Stalin, yeah.
Yeah, and what's funny? Like, being an ANCAP out of all things, some of the best quotes are from totalitarians. Some of them. Like, I'm not going to quote George Bush ever because, I can't get hit in the head that hard. But yeah, that, and the writer is the architect of the human soul. Like, I feel like if you walk in there, like if you were like, Kareem, I need a legit like pickup line for a supermodel, that I'd just be like, quote Stalin on that writer, because it sounds deep, and it is. But I think that's what he meant. Like, you say, okay, 40% increase statistic, and then you actually look at like, what the heck does that mean? And you're like, oh my God, this is really bad. Like, this is catastrophically bad. Like, this is worse than a natural disaster bad. So something has to be up. And I'm trying to tell people, like, hey, look, You don't trust me. Don't trust me. Go look at the insurance company. Okay, I don't trust the insurance company. Go look at theirs. Okay, like I don't trust that. Like, go look at like what's going on in your community. What's going, because hey, if I can get a couple people to be like, there's a problem here, to me that's good enough. Like I did my due diligence, and I can say to my, whatever you believe your creator is, like, hey, at least I tried. At least I put the information out there. At least I got the information out to someone, and they said, hey, I'm going to think this over. Like, I talked to my uncle and said, hey, like, look, listen, here's like the actual statistics on it here. Okay. And he's like, well, but doctors are saying. I'm like, but think about this. And then I just got to think, like, no liability. Don't know the long-term effects, like all this stuff. And then he eventually kind of like said, okay, I get it. So maybe statistics aren't going to scare people, but at least it can start to wake them up. So I don't know. I'm hoping this like shocks somebody, like, oh my God, 40%. Like, what is that?
No, and I think it will, because here's the thing, man, is like, people watch mainstream media, and that's fucking scary. That's a scary fucking thing, because mainstream media is garbage. But here's the other thing. 11,000 more, I think it was like, I don't remember. I'm not going to try and, it was something really high. An extreme amount of more people watch Joe Rogan. Right. So Joe Rogan gets more viewers in one episode than Tucker, Hannity, The Five, what's her name there from MSNBC? God, I can't think of her name.
The View or whatever.
Not her. There's a girl from MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, and Anderson Cooper. He gets pretty close to more than almost all those. When you factor in Tucker, I think he just has a little under. The point is he gets more in one episode than almost all of the number one TV show host for all of MSNBC, CNN, Fox. You go down the line in one episode, right? In one episode, without billions and billions of dollars and advertisements and pharmaceutical companies backing them up, and billions of dollars of donors and funders. He's a dude who smokes pot and does his show and stuff like that. And yes, he was famous before, but I'm just saying, the point is he's like a regular guy who has been doing this podcast and he's telling the truth. He doesn't always get things right, but he's always trying to be as honest as he can, and he's always trying to cover things nuanced and not be biased in what he's looking at, and to be honest. And he brings on everyone from socialist to Marxist to Jordan Peterson to all these different guests to presidential candidates.
Didn't he endorse Bernie Sanders, actually?
He did.
He brought Bernie Sanders.
He did.
And yes. It actually seems to me, if they wouldn't have screwed Bernie over, he'd still be like on the, like, oh, come on, why don't you vote Democrat, man? I want my audience to vote Democrat. Like, not telling them to do that. I think he voted for Jorgensen in the end because he didn't know what to do. But I'm pretty sure he endorsed Bernie for like whatever.
He did for a while. But here's the thing, though, and the point is he is the opposite of, he is counter to mainstream media. He's mainstream, though, in the sense that he's far more popular than they are. Far more people tune into his show. I mean, do you think that 40 million people will tune in to see Anderson Cooper talking to someone? Not even 300,000 can tune in, right? That's what the key demo is. It's actually a little less than 300,000 in the key demo at CNN. So Joe Rogan is popular because he has people on who are very, very prominent guests and who are pretty much, regardless what you want to say about them, they're all trying to get to the truth, right? Some people call them the truthers, whatever you want to say about them. People who are anti-establishment, he has these people on, and tons of people watch him, which is good. It's a good thing, because it's easy to think that everyone else is in that sort of that cult. Everyone else is in that sort of that mass formation psychosis, when not everybody's in it.
I
Not
think most
everyone's in it.
people aren't. I think most people aren't. I think most people are even breaking out. Even the people you would think like, oh, okay, like Jimmy Dore and stuff. Like, yeah, I've seen him with Rogan. Like, he was good. Like, to me, to me,
It only takes a few thousand good people
yeah, they're
to
scared of.
kill to kill and hurt millions of good people, right? Because all you need is a few thousand good people and get them to do something really wrong, and that's enough right there. And when you think about the millions of people who are like this in this sort of mass formation psychosis and are possessed by a virus that works around the mind, a virus that basically destroys everything it comes in contact with. But not only that, a virus that's being controlled and manipulated by a large force. You know, these people are degrading in a lot of ways, and they don't even know it. And it's bad. It's toxic. But when you really open your eyes to seeing what's real and what's truthful, you start to see that, yeah, like, it's far easier. It's so much better to get the truth. It's so much better to be honest. It's so much better not to lie than to lie, be deceptive, believe what you want to believe, ignore the facts. Like, at the core of your being, at your very heart, that's wrong. That. And that's why it's so hard to see some people that I know that are good people fall into this sort of mind virus, this psychosis of believing the mainstream media, not being, and it really comes from, I think a lot of it sort of comes from the fact that people have not completely committed and are still hesitant to completely degrade all of our major institutions. People are still holding on to the last pieces of all of our institutions as if they're somewhat there, or if they're functional. People just, like, even Ben Shapiro admitted this. He's like, man, I thought there was still something there at the CDC. And he admitted how he's basically been hanging on to these institutions and does not want to admit that they're gone, that they've been taken over, and that they're non-functioning. Right. So
I think
people are
that's a
still
part
hanging
of
on to that
it.
last bit
Yeah,
of status quo before it's not going to be that long before hundreds of millions of people probably watch Joe Rogan, because the way CNN is, they keep going down, Joe Rogan keeps going up. So that's a good sign. That's on, if you are on the optimistic side, that this it's looking like things are getting better, right? I'll say that much.
I think so. I think there's going to be more of a push to totalitarianism as
There
decentralization.
is, yeah.
But I think, I think that is decentralization's working. So it's kind of like a guy who gets really frustrated. If they weren't,
Right.
here's a nice thing to think: if they weren't losing, if they weren't desperate, they wouldn't be putting like the boot down or the claw down.
Yeah, exactly. Why are they going all in right now? Right?
Like if,
Why?
and that goes for anything. Like if China didn't see Bitcoin as a threat, they'd say, okay, do whatever you want, mine it, have fun. They're like, oh my god, a decentralized currency, I gotta stop it. They didn't stop it. It seems to me central planners are just frustrated because things aren't working the way they want. And these people need to control things. That's how they operate. And this is outside their paradigm, and they don't believe decentralization can work. Mainly, in my opinion, because I think they're either at the top and they have incentives to keep it like this, or B, they really don't think it can work. I would advise them to, if you really don't think it could work, look at a guy named Peter T. Leeson, who wrote a book called Anarchy Unbound: Why Self-Governance Works Better Than You Think. It really changed my perspective on, like, oh, what happens when you put a bunch of people, even if they're not socially homogenous in one place, do they all kill each other, or do they fight? And if they do fight, maybe it's true that after a while they say, okay, this isn't getting us anywhere. We need to socially cooperate and establish some norms based on customary law and reputation and signaling and stuff like that. So that's how I look at it. They're upset because, oh, Joe Rogan's doing well. Oh, Bitcoin, people are getting into decentralized.
So you think it's sort of like a contempt for the working class, sort of, on the part of the elites, that, like,
Yes.
They see us how we're how Joe Rogan's getting all this popularity and how their everything that they have is just going to shit, how all of their programs are going down, how more and more people are waking up, and then they look at guys like Joe Rogan, they're like, oh, we gotta, they're winning, and they get angry and resentful, and then they try and go full mount, then they try to like cancel people, and then like it's funny to me how it went really, really far from they would never ever the government would never try and mandate a vaccine to the government just mandated vaccines. Like not even 2 years, man. I swear to God, not even 2 years. Not even 2 years did we go from there's no way Biden's going to mandate anything. And this was even on some conservatives didn't think he was. Some people underestimated the exactly how demented he was, right? Because people think that, they assume that just because Biden is not cognitively there, that he can't do a lot of damage. And just remember, chaos can do a lot of damage. It's not ordered chaos. It's not going to be as deadly as a precision drone strike, but it'll be like a nuclear bomb going off with no care, no accuracy, right? So, I mean, the fact that I saw conservatives doing that with Biden was like shocking me, because like Tim Pool, for instance, he didn't think Biden was going to mandate this vaccine. I called it 2 years ago. You had all the people like Alex Jones, even Rogan didn't want to admit it. And no one wanted to admit it, that everything that was happening under Biden, that his history, his past, Kamala Harris, every time I heard more, it completely kind of put together their agenda. And their agenda basically was to build America back better, right? And when you looked at that agenda, which was the global agenda for all of these liberal elites and worldwide, they all did the same thing. They all had the same policy plan, I guess you could say. They all had the same values. They all share the same morals. They're all in the same elite class. They all want to minimize the wealth the working class gets. They want to maximize the amount of power and coercion that they use and have. And they want to make your life maybe not more difficult, but they want to make their lives more easier to live. And they want more money, and they want more power, and they want more control over you. And that means stripping away your rights one by one. And if you, the working class, go along with like, put it like this, if you, the working class, go along with a lockdown that starved over 20 million people in the third world, that's raised suicides to the highest rate, attempted suicide to the highest rates, depression, crime rate, violent crime, nonviolent crime, like it shot all that up, right? And if you, the working class, are willing to go along with that in the name of safety, then what can I do? What am I not allowed to get away with here? So now here comes the full on, just absolutely go for everything. And the next thing is going to be abortion, which I think is going to be the one that really does some, like, it's going to start triggering some stuff, because I don't think the state and the elites have enough influence and control over narrative to convince the majority or even half the population that abortion should be legal. Right. So if that's the case, like, and this has been the case basically for 40 years, like this has been a debate. I think that eventually the Supreme Court is going to do what I think it should have done a long time ago. It's going to rule on the basis of the Constitution. I've been saying this for a while, but I didn't think it was coming. I was like, until really Trump got those justices in, it's really starting to look like they're going to rule in favor of the Constitution and say that abortion cannot, I mean, it just can't be. It just seems to me, if you look at our doctrines, that abortion, it cannot be a constitutional thing. And that the Constitution, overrides like anything, any legislation, bill, or Supreme Court case ever. And what is that term that I said? Like I said it one time. It was like precedent only rules until there's new precedent. So there's always changing precedent. Sometimes it takes 100 years. So with the case of Roe v. Wade, not even close to that. So I think a lot of judges are looking at it and saying that I just don't know how this stands. And then boom, abortion's federally illegal. And then you have a lot of radical people on the left who, I don't know, man. They'll start doing things that are illegal, right? Because if federal abortion's illegal. And then what happens to conservatives when they're like, we want life. We want people to live, and that's what we believe. And the leftists are like, fuck what you believe. You're not right. Well, then I think you get a civil war, at least a civil war.
Get something. I think after this, they might try their climate change. Like, oh, okay, well,
yeah, that is.
with
See,
Rona. I think they'll try the climate change
yeah,
after
I
this. Would be my guess.
I see that though. Kareem, I see that, and I'm like there's just not. I don't think there's enough to sell people on that yet. Like quite yet to sell people on the idea that we should lock down for climate change. But I think that within time, as there becomes, just like with COVID, right? It wasn't like that this virus was the scariest virus the whole time, but at certain points in time, the media was able to create hyper fear that was almost unreal amount of fear that everyone had and shared collectively, right? And put people in a psychosis, which is what McCullough and Malone were talking about. But like with climate change, I think if they can get there, like if they're like, let's just say there's some sort of massive tornado, like some external environmental event that they can use, just like with COVID, as a pretext to do what they want to do. But I do think they have intentions with climate change to do bad things, malevolent things.
I'm going to go down the rabbit hole here. They have weather changing technology. They could use weather changing technology and do something crazy.
I don't even think that's a conspiracy anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it is. They can use weather changing technology and cause something weird to happen. Say, oh my God, look, big tornadoes.
That's true. Yeah.
Scurry snow thing. It's not the scurry burr flu. It's the scurry tornado that took out one dude. All right, let's lock the whole country down. It's like, oh boy, here we go. When it comes to abortion, here's my thing. That's real complicated. Is I'm pro-life, but like in the case of if there's a medical problem and your doctor says, hey, your girlfriend's not gonna make it. Okay. If obviously the case, I know she gets someone takes advantage of her. Okay.
Yeah.
My issue is this. People are still gonna do it. Even if they say it's not constitutionally legal.
Yeah.
Let's go underground. It's like, hey, come on, hey.
And that seems.
I have a coat hanger. Like, oh God, here we go. So, regardless where Roe v. Wade goes, I think people are still going to do the wrong thing. I don't think they have to push the people who want population control push that hard because we're already way below replacement level. I don't know why.
Yeah, we're way below 2.5 children per household, which is below. Right now, we're literally in the zone of population collapse. Any society that gets below the 2.5 level, that's when you're on the verge of population collapse, and that's why Elon Musk is talking about this. It's serious, dude. In 1960, over 5 kids per household. 2022 now, less than 2. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know why it is in Europe, America, and I think I saw Ukraine and Russia and someone on Quora. Do you ever go on Quora?
I do, yeah. Quora sometimes is people answer questions, and usually I get like this is the thing. Like if you go online, sometimes you'll see like answers, but on Quora, I'll see a lot of nuanced answers, and it just seems like
crazy stuff.
Yeah, that is true. There's some crazy stuff on there, but I've gotten pretty good answers to some questions I've asked, like medical questions.
Yeah,
so
the Bill Hicks thing. I was like, I don't know if you've ever read Quora more than like 4 to 5 hours per day. I gotta stop that. But I did read Quora for 5 hours. I just was like getting random stuff. Like, I don't know why. I would thread hop. I'm like, okay, I feel like it's my Reddit. And yeah, a lot of things are like, what's this world leader really want? It's like, well, this. They're worried people in this European country ain't having kids. They're worried people in Ukraine ain't having kids. I think someone's like, what's Putin most afraid of? He's like, I thought it was going to be like something like NATO.
Yeah. I don't think he's afraid of NATO. I think he wants to nuke NATO.
I want to disband NATO. I'm pretty sure NATO.
Dude, if it's Putin versus NATO, I'm with Putin. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm with Putin too, but NATO could beat him if it's just him. If China gets involved, it's the difference. Well, no. I
don't know, dude. Russia's got more nukes than any other country. I'm not saying that they are the most organized. I mean, like Obama said, they're a national power. I think that's what he said, something like that.
They are. Well, they have that many nukes. They definitely are. If you take out the nukes, he'd lose.
Yeah.
but Poland has new, so it's kind of like a lose.
I
So
know. That's what's
I don't
interesting
think
about
they're
this
going
whole
to use
NATO
nukes
thing.
because I don't think they'll use nukes because they'll wipe each other out. But like if he's just fighting, yeah, he'd lose. But yeah, I thought they were going to say NATO or like currency collapse or something. It's like no, Putin's annoyed because I guess Russians aren't having as it's the same thing. It's a European and American thing. They're not having kids now. Like I talked to my friends from Palestine, you know, Kuwait, things like that. Uh, Israel, they're like, okay, yeah, you know, like 8 kids, like you know,
I know, and you know what? All those populations and societies have seen. I wouldn't say, but like you look at a lot of those societies that are doing good right now and that have been doing good like the last 20 years that necessarily weren't before. A big population growth and sparking population. Like the more people are having kids, typically in a functioning society, in a moderated society, you could say definitely in a civil-like society of having kids is a sign of functional familia interaction and that people are having kids and people are mating and getting into relationships and having children and getting married and having children especially in monogamous country. But if usually if if there's not a lot of marriages, if there's not a lot of relationships, and you got a huge population collapse and people are just fucking, that's not typically a good sign. But in most of these societies, that's not the case, is what I'm saying. You have strong family structure, right? Strong familial structure, and strong moral, and I think I would go so far to say is theistic structure there on these countries more so than the United States, and they seem to be growing. Their economy seems to be getting bigger. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are negative. I'm not trying to say that like Israel is necessarily better than America or anything like that, but they have been growing in a lot of ways, and it's just scary to think about that, like how they're getting better when the United States has for a long time been getting worse.
yeah. And even if you want to take another look at it, like the countries around them who actually disagree with America and Israel, like they
Yeah.
also have like in the Middle East, it's like oh Kuwait, like oh, okay, like 5 or 6 is the norm there. There's probably like families like
Wow.
8, 12, yeah,
I didn't even know there was that much.
yeah. Oh no, I have friends who are Palestinian.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I have like 8, 12 kids. Like all right, like damn, like good job. All right, so I'll get to the CNN article you shared with me because I find this kind of crazy. Once in a while, they give overwhelmed hospitals, staffing shortages, businesses closing. Here's how Omicron wave is ravaging local communities. So
This is such a go ahead, just read it.
over the weekend, at least 5 Metro Atlanta school districts announced they would shift to remote learning for the first week of the new year as students return to school after a holiday break that saw the Rona spread even further out of control. The announcements came after 6 major hospital systems in the air reported 100% to 200% increases in Rona hospitalizations. Elsewhere, positive Rona tests forced some restaurants to close at what could be one of the busiest times of the year. And these were the impacts on Rona and the Omicron variant in just one American city as the country grapples with another surge. Are they still? Are they still playing Pandemic? Yeah, they're still playing Pandemic.
Well, the thing is this. This is what's really funny about this is I just had an experience while I was sick. I talked to Kareem about it a little bit, like personally. I haven't talked about it on the podcast yet, but so I got sick and I had like my throat was hurting, was messed up. That's why my voice was so fucked up in a few of my videos, and it was just really scratchy. And I go to
Mhm.
the ER. Well, I go to urgent care first, and I go in there and then I wait, and the lady literally says you have to wait outside. So I have to literally wait outside the building because I can't wait in there because of COVID, of course, because it's so damn dangerous. It's killing everywhere. It's just so BS. Anyways, so the doctor, I was like, okay, well that means I'm still gonna come in and they're still gonna check my vital signs, right? Okay, whatever. And I'm waiting outside, and then I get a call on my phone, and it's the doctor, and she's like talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, telling her my symptoms, my throat really hurts, and she was like, "Oh, that sounds like the variant." Oh, wait, no. Well, first she said, that just sounds like COVID. That sounds like COVID. I was like, are you sure? Because I still can taste. And she was like, did you have COVID before? I was like, yes, I've had it before. And she's like, well, you can get it multiple times. I'm like, okay. And she doesn't even see me, doesn't check my vital signs, doesn't check my blood pressure, doesn't take my temperature, anything. Mind you, I'm sick and I don't feel good, and I haven't felt good for 4 days. And she knew that. I had felt sick for like 4 days. That's why I finally went to the urgent care. And long story short, a nurse comes out, swabs my nose, and says for a COVID test and a flu test, and the flu test came back negative, COVID test came back negative, and then the doctor finally came out and was like, "Yeah, you tested negative, but we can't really do anything, and I think you still have it." That's what she said. I think you have the variant because the variant's not going to show up, and she was saying. And she was like, it's time for the golden standard. I'm going to give you the PCR test. She called the PCR test the golden standard. I found that kind of ironic, but and then she sent me on my way for 2 days to wait for the second lab test. I'm like, you didn't even treat me. You gave me no medicine. You didn't even look at my vitals. You just said it's COVID. I tested negative, and then you still said it's COVID and didn't give me any medicine. So then I went to the ER, which is a whole nother story. And long story short, because I don't want to make it too long, I was in the ER for 4 hours. When I got there, the lady said that there have been people waiting 7 hours. And when you go to the ER and there's people fighting in the fucking waiting room, you know it's a bad sign. You know, like something's not right when people are like fighting and arguing because they've been in there for hours. Anyways, I wait there 4 hours, and then I start to realize what the hell's going on a little bit. I start to look around, and I realize that there's not that many like ambulances coming in. So I'm like, why are the doctors so backed up? Well, for one, I found out that they were short staffed. I was like, okay, they're probably short staffed. But then I started to realize, dude, I looked around, like I'd say 90% of the people I was around, they didn't look like anything was wrong with them. And then every time, like I heard them, it was always COVID. Every single one, like, I'm over there listening to everyone's conversations like a weirdo. But I was eavesdropping. I was just curious to hear why everyone was there and why it was so backed up. And everyone was talking about the variant. And I think what's going on right now is that you're seeing these hospitalizations that are completely, or hospital visits, because that's the stat they use, mind you, hospital visits where people are being very overly cautious and they're just scared. And why wouldn't they be scared? They watch the mainstream media. They've been fear mongering for a long time. And you have these millions of people who are flooding hospitals and flooding waiting rooms and stuff like that when they don't even need to be there. And that seems to be the case given there has not been one official death directly due to Omicron. So, million people in the hospital, not one dead. Something weird's going on.
Yeah, that's the thing that's getting me. Like everybody, like, hey, I coughed one time. Oh, you know what that is? And I'm like, I remember actually when this started, I watched people on Twitch and someone coughed and they're like, "Oh,
I know." I
like,
felt
I have
awkward.
allergies. He's like,
dude,
not every
all COVID. Everything is COVID.
Yeah.
You got diarrhea. Oh, that's COVID. That's COVID. I got to test you
yeah.
for COVID.
I got
Everything
hit by a car, but I coughed once after I got hit by the car. Oh, it's COVID. Like anything, like it must be Rona. And I know what, and I hate to say it, I know why they do it too. Do you know if the hospital reports that they also get compensated? I think.
Yeah, they get compensated like over $20,000 for a death.
To me, it's what I would call like a corporatist circle.
Yeah, and you got to remember their biggest buddies are the mainstream media. Yeah. So it's like, hey, buddies, can we get some more fear going and make sure we really, really, really hype up these variants? We need some more money, and then ironically enough, they don't want pre-COVID treatment, and the only medicine they want is the vaccines. Oh, and it turns out that also when a patient dies and doesn't get any medical treatment at all, that they get $40,000. So it's like they're dying because the hospitals and doctors around the country are refusing to treat, really. And this is what McCullough said, and this is what Malone said. Doctors are refusing to treat, and the vaccine is being pretty much espoused as being the only solution to this problem. And then you have all these people dying and paying, giving millions and millions of dollars to these hospitals in the process. So it seems like whether they're all working together in a lockstep, I guess you could say, which Operation Lockstep, look into that. I should probably go over that on my YouTube. Anyways, whether they're in tandem or they're all coincidentally doing the same thing, it's corrupt. It's corrupt at every freaking level, man, and
It
it's crazy.
It is crazy. But with that, I'll just end with these two stories. You can add me on Getter at Kareem66, and you can add Daniel at Daniel Betro. So go, if you're on Getter, please go ahead and give me an ad. Just to close it off, I was looking at the We Are Change Telegram, and I saw that Amsterdam, they're fighting back now. I was like, yay, okay, the weed wore off. Let's fight against the mandates. Although maybe it was good weed. But Dutch police dispersed thousands protesting in Amsterdam against the Rona lockdown. I would play it, but riot police with batons and shields broke up a crowd of several thousand who had gathered in Amsterdam Sunday to protest against the Rona lockdowns and the medical procedure. Public gathering of more than 2 people are prohibited under restrictions in the Netherlands, an effort to prevent the Omicron, because it's scurry, variant of Rona, overwhelming an already strained healthcare system, because every time someone coughs, they run to the emergency room. At least 30 people were detained after scuffles, during which 4 officers were injured, police said in a statement. Amsterdam Mayor Fekme Hasselma, I think that's Hasselma, had issued an emergency ordinance empowering police to clear the central museum square after the protesters defied a ban on public gatherings. The protesters, who mostly did not wear masks or abide by social distancing rules, ignored an order not to hold a march, walked along the main thoroughfare playing music and holding yellow umbrellas in sign of opposition to government measures. I hope it was heavy metal. The Netherlands went into a sudden lockdown December 19th, with the government ordering the closure of all but essential stores. I hope the red light district's on. That's essential. I didn't say that. As well as restaurants, hairdressers, gyms, museums, and public places until at least January 14th. So, look, they're getting up. They're doing something.
Is this the same?
Go ahead.
I don't know why am I thinking.
This was on January 1st, so I'm a little late. But guys, if you're in the DC area, if you're around Virginia, and you want to fight against the mandates and the scurry burr flu people, go to Defeat the Mandates. You can march with them. Washington, D.C., January 23rd, 2022. Make it your year to defeat the mandates. People want to be free to work, travel, learn, question, speak, pray, and free to say no. And the mandates are un-American. Stop mass firings. Stop segregating people. Stop calling people unpatriotic for making a medical choice. Let's win this, because if we don't win this, it's going to look very, very bad. You're not going to. You're going to inherit.
We know what happens when countries don't win the fight against tyranny. There tends to be a lot of death.
We've seen it. So, with that being said, thank you very much for tuning in. Add me on Getter, Kareem66, and Daniel Betro. If you're on Getter, definitely. I think it's a growing platform. I think it is going to be something that we'll slowly see. Like I say, it's an experiment. We'll see how the experiment goes, and I'm not endorsing it, but I'm saying I'm trying it. It's like an appetizer. I'm trying to see, like, hey, does this taste good or is this weird? And you can find me on there. So I'll just go ahead and start plugging stuff. You can find me on Getter at Kareem66, following 7 people, and I have a few followers myself. I just started. You can go ahead and follow Daniel Betro, all one word. Daniel, his last name Betro. Go ahead and follow him there. Also, if you want to follow Daniel Betro on YouTube, I highly recommend you do. Fight against censorship. You can find him by typing in his name, Daniel B, just B, and then you can find all of his videos here at The Quantum Effect. He's done quite a few with me and other people who have very, very good insights, and he has some good insights on Freudian and Jungian psychology specifically, relating to a lot of what Jordan B. Peterson talks about, and some good truther stuff about Bill Gates, Tesla, and Fauci. If you want to find our work, you can simply do so by typing in the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. So that's it. I'm your host, Kareem Mays. Thank you for tuning in, everyone, and have a great day, night, afternoon, wherever you are. See you in the next video.